Good evening, everyone. Mid-May 2026. Let me say that again. Mid-May 2026. Because I want you to understand that when I say within hours, everything changes. I am not speaking in the vague and comfortable language of something that might happen sometime in a season that could extend indefinitely without anyone being able to say when exactly the sometime arrives. I am speaking about right now. This specific moment in May 2026, that has a particular quality that I have not seen in a reading in some time. The quality of a genuine inflection point, a place in the story where the story bends in a direction it was not bending before, and where everything that comes after the bend is different from everything that came before it in ways that matter and that are permanent. This is that place. Mid-May 2026 is that place in your story. And the hours I am describing are the hours of the bend. Welcome. And do not ignore this, not because I am telling you not to, but because what I am about to describe is the kind of thing that you will wish you had paid full attention to when you look back at this period from wherever you are standing. In the months that follow, when what I am describing has fully arrived, and you can see the bend clearly, in retrospect, let me tell you what is special about mid-May 2026. Specifically, because the specificity is the point. This is a moment of convergence, the specific kind where multiple things that have been moving on separate tracks, each in its own direction, each at its own pace, each producing its own particular developments, over the period that preceded this moment, are arriving at the same juncture simultaneously. Not because they were coordinated, not because anyone planned them to arrive together, but because the timing of each of them individually brings them all to the same place at the same moment in mid-May 2026. In your specific situation, in the specific configuration of your specific life. And when multiple things that have been building separately arrive at the same juncture simultaneously, the combined weight of their arrival is more than the sum of the individual things, because they reinforce each other and amplify each other and produce together something that none of them could have produced alone in the same form or with the same impact. That combined and amplified thing is what everything changes means. In the next few hours of mid-May 2026, I want to describe what is converging in the specific terms I can see from here, because vague descriptions of convergence are not useful, and I want to be useful to you in this specific moment. That I am telling you is the inflection point of something significant. The first thing converging is a decision, someone's decision that has been in the making for longer than, and that is arriving. In the next few hours, at its conclusion, in the form of a choice being made, that affects something between you and this person in a way that will be visible and felt in the real dimension of your connection, rather than only in the invisible interior where the decision was being made until now. The decision is made or is being made in the hours between now and when you finish reading this. And what it produces is the beginning of something that is different from what was happening before. Between you and this person, in the specific way that decisions change things, when they are made after a long period of being unmade and held in the uncertain middle between the options that were available, but none of which had yet been chosen. The second thing converging is a result in the material or professional or creative dimension of your life, something that you put effort into in this period or in the period that preceded this one is arriving at its outcome in mid-May 2026 in the form of something that is either confirmed or becomes available or produces a return. That changes the practical texture of your daily life in ways that are real and measurable. This result is not dramatic on its own in the form of a single life-changing event that reorganizes everything simultaneously, but it is significant in the cumulative form of something. That changes what is possible from this moment forward in the specific area where the result is arriving, and therefore changes what can be built. In the chapters that follow from the new baseline that the result establishes, what is possible from this baseline is more than what was possible from the previous one. That is the specific form of everything changes. In the material dimension, for mid-May 2026, the third thing, converging, is the most personal of the three, and perhaps the most significant because it is internal rather than external. And internal changes, when they arrive, produce the most lasting and fundamental form of everything changes, because they change the person who is navigating the external world rather than only the external world itself. Something is completing in you, an understanding or a healing or a letting go of something you have been carrying for longer than it was useful to carry it. That is arriving at its natural completion in this specific moment of mid-May 2026, because the conditions for it to complete are finally present in a way they were not in the preceding period, however long that period was. The completing feels like a settling, a specific kind of settling that is different from resignation or from giving up on something or from the exhausted acceptance of someone who has stopped fighting, not because they found peace, but because they ran out of fight. This settling is the peace that comes from something actually resolving rather than from the exhaustion of someone who has stopped trying to resolve it without it having actually resolved It is resolving in you right now in mid-May 2026 as part of the convergence that is making these hours. The inflection point I described at the beginning of this message. Whew. I want to explain why I said do not ignore this. Because the instruction feels urgent, and I want to honor that urgency with an honest explanation of what it is pointing toward. Inflection points are easy to miss. In real time, they are much easier to see. In retrospect, when you can look back at the period and identify the moment where the story bent and see clearly that what came after was fundamentally different from what came before in real time. The inflection point often feels like an ordinary moment with slightly unusual features, or a moment that feels important, but whose full importance is not yet visible, because the full importance requires the perspective of what follows to become clear, and the perspective of what follows is not available in the moment of the inflection itself. Do not ignore this. Means be awake to this moment in the specific and conscious way of someone who knows that what they are currently in is significant, rather than moving through it in the distracted and half-present way that most ordinary moments get moved through without the recognition of what they actually were until much later. Be awake to the decision that is being made or has been made in the hours around this message by someone who matters to you, and whose decision matters to what exists between you. Be awake to the result that is arriving in the material dimension, in whatever specific form, the result of what you have been working on or waiting for confirmation of is taking in these hours. And be awake to the internal completing, the settling that is happening in you. That is the most significant of the three, because it is the one that changes everything by changing you, rather than only by changing the circumstances around you. All three are happening simultaneously in the hours of mid-May 2026 that this message is arriving in for you specifically. I want to speak now about what is different about this specific period in your story compared to what came before it, because I think understanding the before and after of what is happening now will help you receive the hours with the full awareness they deserve. The period that preceded mid-May 2026 for you specifically had a particular quality that I want to name, because naming it will help you recognize the difference between it and what is now arriving. The preceding period had the quality of preparation, of invisible building, of things being set in motion without the visible evidence that would have made the building feel like progress, rather than simply the continuation of circumstances that were not quite moving yet. in the direction you were working toward. You were putting things in that period without consistent returns arriving in the form that would have confirmed that what you were putting in was building towards something real, rather than simply disappearing into the particular void that seasons of preparation sometimes feel like, when you are inside them without the perspective of the season that follows to confirm that the preparation was building something. The preparation was building something. And mid-May 2026 is when the building becomes visible as something, rather than remaining invisible as only the process that was producing it. I also want to speak about who you are now compared to who you were at the beginning of the preceding period, because the preparation did not only build something external, it built something in you. That is part of what makes this moment the inflection point. It is, rather than just another moment in the continuation of what has been, you are more clear now about what you want and what you will not accept and what you are worth and what the people and situations in your life owe you, in terms of the quality of their presence and the honesty of their engagement and the proportionality of what they give to what you give. That clarity is not something you had at the beginning of the period that preceded this one. In the form it has now, it arrived through the period, through what it required, and what it taught, and what it made visible about who you are, and what you need, and what is worth your continued investment, and what is not. That clarity is walking into mid-May 2026 with you as the internal asset. That makes what is arriving possible to receive fully in the form it is arriving in, because you are now capable of receiving it in a way you perhaps were not at the beginning of the preceding period, when the clarity had not yet been built by everything the preceding period produced in you. I want to give you something very specific now to watch for as the hours unfold, because watching for the right things is what allows the recognizing when the things arrive in whatever form they take in your specific situation. Watch for a communication that arrives from someone you were not expecting to hear from today, or from someone you were expecting to hear from, but in a form that is different from the form you were expecting. More complete, more direct, more specific about what it is saying than previous communications from this person have been. That communication is the first thread of the convergence making itself visible in the external world rather than only in the energy world, where it has been forming until now. Watch for a shift in how something feels. That has been feeling a certain way for a while. That suddenly, without dramatic cause, feels different, less heavy, or more clear, or simply different in a way that you cannot immediately explain, but that is unmistakable in the quality of the difference. That shift is the internal completing, registering in your direct experience of the hours of mid-May 2026, and watch for something small and practical that arrives in the material dimension, that confirms something, or opens something, or resolves something that had not been confirmed or opened or resolved before these hours. These are the three markers of the convergence arriving in the form your specific life and your specific situation and your specific relationships are going to deliver it in mid-May 2026, to watch for as the hours unfold, because watching for the right things is what allows the recognizing when the things arrive in whatever form they take in your specific situation. Watch for a communication that arrives from someone you were not expecting to hear from today, or from someone you were expecting to hear from, but in a form that is different from the form you were expecting, more complete, more direct, more specific about what it is saying than previous communications from this person have been. That communication is the first thread of the convergence making itself visible in the external world rather than only in the energy world where it has been forming until now. Watch for a shift in how something feels that has been feeling a certain way for a while, that suddenly, without dramatic cause, feels different, less heavy, or more clear, or simply different in a way that you cannot immediately explain, but that is unmistakable in the quality of the difference. That shift is the internal completing, registering in your direct experience of the hours of mid-May 2026, and watch for something small and practical that arrives in the material dimension, that confirms something, or opens something, or resolves something that had not been confirmed or opened or resolved before these hours. These are the three markers of the convergence arriving in the form your specific life and your specific situation and your specific relationships are going to deliver it in mid-May 2026. Whew. Do not ignore them when they arrive, even if they feel smaller than what the title promised, because inflection points in the real time of experiencing them always feel smaller than they will feel in retrospect. That is the nature of the bend. You only see the full arc of it when you are far enough past it to see where it went. Right now you are in the bend, and the bend looks like a communication, a shift, a small practical confirmation. Those three things together in these hours are the everything changes of mid-May 2026. For you, I want to close by saying something about the within hours, because that phrase is doing something specific in this message that I want to honor with explanation. Within hours is the specific energy of something so close that the time between now and then is measured in hours rather than days or weeks or the vague seasons that readings often work in, when the specific timing is not visible or not relevant or not the point in this reading. The timing is both visible and relevant and the point, because what is happening in these specific hours of this specific day in mid-May 2026, and the specificity is the scarily accurate part of a message that is designed to name what is happening in the moment it is happening, rather than in the comfortable retrospective form that is easier but less useful. Within hours, everything changes in mid-May 2026 for you specifically in the 3 specific ways I described. Be awake for all 3 of them as they arrive in whatever form your specific life delivers the convergence that this specific moment in May 2026 is producing. Do not ignore this, because looking back from wherever you will be standing in the months that follow this moment, you will see the bend clearly, and you will be glad that you were awake for it when it was happening, rather than only recognizing it after it had already passed. The bend is happening now. Be in it,